Split Tube Media and the Cinesthesia podcast present a special daily October podcast. Hell to the king.
Jason, have you read Stephen King's books? Have you read Stephen King's books? King movie, a Stephen King movie. King movie, a Stephen King movie. King movie, a Stephen King movie.
I have done my best to scare the shit out of you guys.
Yeah. Welcome back to... I didn't mean to
I just wasn't expecting.
Snarf you.
Welcome back to where, Jason? Where are we now?
Hell. We're in hell.
Hello.
But a special hell.
Yeah.
A hell.
A hell of our own making.
To the king. This is the special October daily podcast edition of Cinesthesia, Hell to the King. We're on day 6, Jim.
No.
The week is almost over.
I can't believe it.
We've almost made it through an entire week of Stephen King movies, and not just one movie a day.
Sometimes 4 movies.
We're on our 6th day.
Yeah.
And our 10th movie.
Okay, that's correct. Earlier, I was like, I feel like we've done 10 of these, and perhaps it's because we have, but in done movies, not in episodes. God, why did we make this so hard on ourselves? We should have done a half a movie every day.
I mean, we should have said no.
Yeah, we should have not.
First, I should have said no to myself, and
when
then you should have said no
plan,
to me.
You should have been like, that's a bad plan. And then when you pitched me this plan, I should have been like, that's a bad plan. To
be fair, I think when I pitched it to you, I said, now this is a bad idea, but...
Yeah, you did front with that.
Do you want to do this?
Really, the kicker was that you were like, hey, here's a terrible idea I had. And I was like, oh, I love that because of how great every Stephen King movie is. And you were like, oh, no, you're wrong. Every Stephen King movie is terrible. And then we were like, oh, I guess we have to for society. I feel like we're doing community service right now.
In Castle Rock.
In Castle Rock, yeah. It's like we committed a Castle Rock crime and somehow didn't get murdered by a weird spirit, because if you commit a crime in Stephen King Town, chances are you're going to get murdered by a van full of worms. Or
elsewhere. Our movie today, one of the ones that does not take place in New England at all.
Yeah, that threw me. I was expecting... I think it says... Does it say near the beginning where it is, and I ignored it, and then I just spent a while being like, where is this supposed to be? Because it doesn't feel like New England. Or maybe it doesn't say, and I'm not a dum-dum. But either way...
I don't remember if it said specifically where it was, but it definitely is in, like, the Corn Belt. You know?
It's very Midwest.
Yeah.
Which took... I thought that all of these were going to be in New England. And I was disappointed.
I feel like if I'd thought about it...
For only that reason.
If I'd thought about it, I would have known that they couldn't possibly all take place in New England. First of all, The Shining takes place, in Colorado?
Yeah, but they're from New England.
True, yeah. So they're bringing it with them.
Yeah.
So the couple in this could be from New England.
Oh,
and
I think
in the short story they might be.
Yeah, sure. Why not?
I know in the short story they're driving cross country, but in the short story they're also a slightly older married couple that hates each other.
Oh. Is this one that you've read?
Yes, this is one that I have read. So I will be relying on that for a lot of what I have to say, because beyond that I don't know how much I'm going to have to say about this movie.
For sure, yeah.
The movie we're talking about, of course, is Children of the Corn.
Oh, from wait, really? I'm just kidding. I knew it was that.
Wait, which Corn Belt-based Stephen King movie did you watch?
I thought we were watching King Corn, the documentary about how we should eat less corn, and corn is taking over the... That feels Stephen King-y.
Narrated by Stephen King?
Yeah. He blasts through it on a mini bike.
It's just a job I wanted to do.
Yeah, it's his community service.
Yeah. We had a good day yesterday. We doubled up on some solid movies.
It was like a good 1-2 punch, a decent King.
Yeah. We had what we've decided is maybe the best Stephen King movie, at least so far, The Dead Zone, and Christine, which is not prime Carpenter, but it's still Carpenter.
Yeah. It is exactly.
And it's not even like the Ward Carpenter. It's like Carpenter in his prime era, just not quite living up to prime.
Yeah. Yeah, all of the elements visually and auditory. Well, we already talked about it. Anyone?
Jim, let's just talk about Christine again, because otherwise we have to talk about Children of the Corn.
I feel like no one is going to listen to these at the same pace that we are generating them. So no one's going to be like, oh, I just listened to that yesterday. But if someone had, can you imagine how mad they would be if we were like, we're just going to talk about the same two things. Let's just reiterate all of our thoughts from yesterday.
Yeah. Children of the Corn.
Jason, do you know how many of these movies there are? Not King, Children of the Corn.
It's a whole series, right?
It is a full franchise. I mean, I don't know how many.
It's a full franchise that's been rebooted.
Has it really?
I think so.
Wow.
I think there was an aughts reboot.
Wow.
Now that has sequel.
Because people must care about this movie.
People really responded to it when it came out, I think it was pretty much panned and ignored, but it became like this cult classic, I guess. And I can, you know what, I mean, we're jumping ahead a little bit, but I can see why. There are a few things in this movie that I did think were genuinely awesome.
Sure. Like that one kid. That one kid is amazing.
Yeah. Who's actually like a 30-year-old little person, I think. But he's really good.
Yeah.
And there's just some bonkers shit in it that not enough for me to say that it's a good movie.
No.
But enough that I could see it lingering in your mind and thinking like, I want to go back and revisit that world. I want to go do something better in that world, maybe. So it actually makes me curious to watch the sequels.
Sure.
Especially if they're not made by the same people. Just to see if they latched onto the same things I latched onto of what was kind of fun about it, and went back and made maybe a better movies, leaning on the fun stuff.
Sure.
I don't know. Probably not. But I am curious now. So I've replaced the slate going forward with only Children of the Corn movies.
Perfect. I'm very happy with that.
Yeah.
Is there a sequel? Do they go far enough to make Children of the Corn?
I know that they go far enough that they have the guy who plays Isaac, the little kid, come back as an old adult.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, I think they brought him back when the actor was like 60 or something.
Sure. Did he still look like a child?
I haven't seen it. I mean, he didn't look like a child in terms of
Jason,
the wrinkles
watch
on his
it now.
face.
And come back and tell me.
So, where should we start with Children of the Corn?
Who are the Children of the Corn? This one is New World. This one is...
yeah, that's a good place to start. Talk about New World for a minute.
Yeah, because that's... No matter what Children of the Corn is, New World is worth talking about, right? That's Roger Corman in the 70s, pretty much the full run of the 70s, right?
I believe so.
And I think the company kept going...
Certainly into the 80s, because this is 84.
Oh, yeah. So it's 70s, 80s, and then I think the company keeps going into the 90s, but I think he dips out at some point.
Oh, maybe he dips out earlier than... No, because I think New World... Did New World produce his Fantastic Four in the 90s?
Oh, maybe. Maybe I'm wrong.
I don't know. Let's talk about this thing that we don't actually know.
Yeah. Okay, here, I'm looking it up right now. Rupert Murdoch bought into it in 94 and bought it out in 97, so he was still involved until 97.
Okay.
And he started it in 1970, Roger Corman, and made a bunch of great stuff under New World. I feel like the older Roger Corman stuff is like beautiful Roger Corman stuff, and then the American International, which is like the stuff he's doing before this like really starts to heat up. But like the New World, I think, is where it really catches fire, right? That's like where he's like inventing Joe Dante and Ron Howard, and he's making Death Race 2000 and Piranha 2: The Spawning. You know, that's all New World. That's sort of, for me, the best era of Roger Corman.
I won't go quite that far because I have
you love the American International stuff.
I love the American. I love especially his Poe stuff.
Sure.
His Poe and Lovecraft stuff with Vincent Price. I mean, especially because that stuff is so. First of all, it's so like the color use in those films alone is so ahead of its time.
It's true.
I mean, by only a few years, but those few years were really significant to be doing the kind of deep psychedelic, vibrant colors that he was doing before the psychedelic part of the 60s really heated up.
For sure.
And then that color usage is a direct influence on the Italian horror movies of the 70s and 80s.
Sure.
Like Mario Bava and Dario Argento. You don't get them without those Corman films. So those Corman films are really important to me.
That's true. That's true. They're like deeply fundamental to things that are fundamental to what is cool right now, right? That's the root of all the things that we love, I think, is that early Corman.
Yeah,
there's
a lot of it in there.
That early era of Corman, it's also when he was inventing Francis Ford Coppola and maybe Martin Scorsese, unless I made that up.
Who did Corman produce Boxcar Bertha?
I don't know.
Or Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore?
I want to say yes. I think he also invented Jonathan Demme, but I think that was in the later phase.
Yeah, I think Demme came in. I don't remember when Caged Heat was.
It's got to be mid 80s.
Or I don't know if he did earlier stuff than that. Even I can't remember. But yeah. So regardless, absolutely New World essential.
Yeah.
Roger Corman inventing everyone.
Yeah. He was providing... Sorry, let's just dip into Roger Corman for a minute, because this is a thing that I think is important culturally, which is that we used to have... Corman, I think, is the biggest one, but there are other dudes, and Troma kind of did this too, and there are other folks. But there used to be sort of like B-level movie production houses that were trying new talent and were bubbling them up, right? There's that whole story about James Cameron, again, came up through Corman, where he was on, I don't remember what movie it is, but he was on some movie. He was like a PA, and there was a dead arm with maggots on it, and they were like, oh, why can't we get these dumb maggots to squirm? And little baby Jimmy Cameron came over and was like, oh, what if I hook this arm up to a car battery? And so he ran a voltage through the arm, and all those maggots squirmed, and they got their shot. And Corman was like, great, why don't you direct Piranha 2?
Is that Galaxy of Terror?
Maybe. I would believe that.
Somebody out there knows and is mad at me for not knowing.
Yeah, someone's like, come on, guys, tell the story right. But that's... There used to be sort of this like beautiful system where then Corman would be like, okay, I'm going to give you a movie that costs $50,000 and you have a week to make it. Here's the script. Here's the people that are going to star in it. Let's see what you can do. Right.
Yeah.
And we just don't have that kind of a system anymore, because we have sort of the bottom level of indie film where it's like you scrape together some money and put some stuff on a credit card and make your movie that you are the one who cares about. Mm-hmm. And we have studio movies, but there's no sort of small scale studio that's bringing up new talent and finding people and giving them a place to try things and find themselves. And I think that it's...
Yeah, I would say like the closest
8 years
thing...
we're going to run out of people who can make movies.
Yeah, if there's even... I don't know. I'm not going to get into the prediction game, but I feel like the closest thing to what you're talking about would be something like Asylum, and Asylum's not interested in making real movies.
Yeah, they don't.
Because that's the big difference, is that Corman wanted to make real movies. They were
right.
They're sleazy or trashy or exploitation films, but if they hit their marks, then they could be whatever else they wanted to be.
Yes, and even Corman now is making like Sharktopus, or you know what I mean. He's sort of... That whole part of the industry has fallen by the wayside in lieu of this sort of sarcastic version of low-budget film.
Yeah.
People only believe that your low-budget movie can make money if it's intentionally bad, which I think is sad. Yeah. I think that there's a space for movies that are taking a risk and doing something weird, but whatever. Children of the Corn. Children of the Corn
is New World. This is not one of New World's
finest,
greatest moments, but
it is one of their moments.
It is. I'm looking at this right now, and the when and how Roger Corman is involved with various things is hard for me to actually parse.
Sure. His name is on a lot of stuff.
Yeah. I think he was with it until 96.
Okay.
but I don't think he was necessarily individually involved with everything.
I'm sure he couldn't have been.
Although if anybody could. But,
right.
Okay, so, Children of the Corn, it's a New World picture, which did excite me. I love that logo.
Of course.
I remember that logo from the failed pilot for an X-Men animated show. Before the X-Men animated show that actually made it on the air, there was a different pilot that was really lushly animated.
Okay.
And very close to the, at least, comics at the time.
Oh, that's cool.
Or the comics from earlier. And I had a tape of the failed pilot when I was a kid, and I watched it so many times. And so that New World logo means a lot to me.
Yeah. Coming up, it was like kind of a sign of quality, right? Like the beginning of the VHS tape, you're like, oh, this one's probably going to be fun.
Yeah. It at least meant that, I don't know, it had a pulse.
Yeah.
But where can we go from there? Let's talk about everything.
I think we've hit everything.
But the movie.
I think we've hit everything, Jason. I don't think there's anything left to cover.
So that was Children of the Corn. It's a movie. No, we're actually giving this movie a little bit short shrift because I don't think
fine.
it's that.
It's fine.
It's not as bad as we're making it sound like. It's certainly no Cujo.
Oh boy, is it not?
I was actually prepared for this movie to be way worse than it was.
Yeah.
Though I was not prepared for this movie to be as barely competent as it was.
That's the thing, right? It has a lot of good elements. It has Linda Hamilton.
Yeah, it's got a good cast.
One 30-year-old man being a child in a super creepy way. It has some rad effects. The basic story is fine. There's nothing.
It has 2 or 3 good scenes.
Yeah, but most of it is just sort of clumsily plodding along.
What is it with this corn?
You got me.
I mean, right from the beginning, so we'll start out right at the beginning of the film. We get pretty decent, sort of sepia-toned imagery of this small town. It's not entirely clear when this town is supposed to be existing, and that's actually, I think, a problem at the core of this adaptation. I actually don't know that it is.
You don't think so?
I
Okay.
think it's a problem at the core of this adaptation. It has to do with a major change they made from the short story that I think they didn't understand what to do with it. I'll get to that in a minute.
I read it as it's contemporary, but also the 1950s. I thought that was a move they were making, but
I thought it was too, but then they didn't. It didn't really
do
pay
anything?
off.
Yeah.
Because I could be down for that if then we're going to spend some time in that world and
for sure
and experience how it's weird.
Yeah.
But instead, we get this sort of contemporary / 1950s world narrated by a bad child narrator.
Yes.
Who's just...
Why was that there? Why have that narration?
It felt like it was layered on after a test screening, and an executive said, I don't really know what's going on. You need to explain it more.
Right.
So the kid just laboriously explains what's about to happen, and then you see teenagers and a waitress, unclear,
yeah,
kill
I think so.
An adult waitress. That was confusing.
She was just in for murder, Jason. She was like, oh, there's murders going down. I am in.
But yeah, so the movie is about a small town in the Corn Belt in, I think, Iowa or Indiana, one of those places, where a child preacher convinces all of the children in the town to kill all of the adults in the town.
Yes.
And then runs the town as his own religious cult, essentially. Yes. Which, solid premise.
Yeah. Can I don't know if I'm subverting anything that you're trying to squeeze in gently.
Oh, I don't know what I'm trying to squeeze in.
There's a really lovely, this is a thing I've mentioned a couple of times, but I feel like this is a beautiful example of this one aspect of this Stephen King run of films, which is that, and I mean, I don't know how true this is in his books, but I have this, it seems to me that in Stephen King movies, no one is ever attempting subterfuge. Everyone is just saying what's happening, and then things happen. And this movie is a great example where they're like, oh, there's a demon out in the field, And you're like, ooh, is it going to be one of those, like, is there a demon, or is this kid just pretending there's a demon to get control? And they're like, no, we said there's a demon. Like, of course there's a demon out in the field. Why would we have lied to you about that?
Yeah.
Which is, it seems like Stephen King's approach is, it's just very honest. He's never like, ooh, is this, or is it not this? He's just like, yeah, there's a demon out there. Continue. And I really love that aspect of it. Because I spent a minute being like, ooh, I wonder if it's going to be, like, not a demon and this kid's just real tricky. But, like, no, that's not how these work.
Yeah. I mean, I do think they wanted you to wonder that.
Sure.
Because
you kind of do for a minute.
You do. Because I mean, you do in the short story as well.
Okay.
Like, you suspect there's probably something because it's a Stephen King story and it's probably going to get supernatural, but it could, until the very end of it, could just be a story about some kids who are driven completely insane.
But is that... I guess, sure. I think if this hadn't been a Stephen King movie, and if I weren't in the middle of a run, if I hadn't just watched 10 Stephen King movies, I think I maybe would have been like, ooh, is it or isn't it? But I feel like in the context of these movies, it's so far 100% of the time. At the beginning, they're like, no, he's a psychic now. Oh, all right, but this kid, this kid can fly. That's the premise of the story. Let's go. You know what I mean? It's like, it feels like there never isn't a thing.
He's not, he doesn't, they're not going for cheap suspense, which is nice. Yeah. Because that kind of thing is sort of a... Yeah, that kind of thing does sort of sap some energy from...
For sure.
A thriller where
it also
you're
makes
going,
it sort of
is it or isn't it?
Yeah.
The first time you find out whether it is or not, then there's no more... There's
then
nothing
why
left
watch
of
the movie again? Yeah, exactly. Which is, it's really lovely that he kind of operates this way, right? Because you know exactly what you're going to be getting.
Yeah. And at the same time... And then
you're like, what does it mean that this demon is in the field? Well, how do these people react to that? And that's what it makes them more like hurricane movies, right? You're never like, but is there really a hurricane?
Yeah.
Except, I guess, in Take Shelter. But that's not really a hurricane.
Well, the other thing, too, is that even the way it's played in the movie, which is, as we said, very clumsy, not at all as artfully done in the short story, although the short story is not, that artfully done. There's some... Well, I'll talk about the story in a minute. The way they play it, it could just be that the thing is some sort of force as opposed to like an actual physical monster. Or it could just be... I guess what I'm trying to say is that even if there isn't a monster that shows up on screen, there's so much horror and terror already happening through this that it almost doesn't matter if Isaac's making it up.
Sure.
And the one thing I actually thought the movie did well on the story version, on a story level, is that no sooner are we brought into Isaac's world, finally, towards the end of the movie, after so much time is spent on nothing, then he's immediately betrayed by Malachi.
Immediately.
So it's not like you even have time to be like, oh, is this guy lying? It's like, oh, it kind of doesn't matter because they're going to kill him.
Yeah. They're like, rap, rap, he's gone.
Yeah. Which I thought was really funny. The movie's mostly just clumsy.
Yeah.
And it's not like there's a ton of story for them to build from in the short story.
I imagine that is true.
They definitely had to make some choices to turn this into a movie, and whoever the screenwriter was not up to it.
Sure.
In the story, almost everything is explained or takes place. The story is basically this couple is driving across country. They hate each other. They're taking this trip to sort of try to save their marriage, and they both think it's pretty much doomed.
Sure.
So you already have this aspect of these people are not deserving to die, but there's this sort of karmic quality to them ending up in this situation because they're both really unpleasant people and unpleasant to each other.
Yeah.
And it goes pretty much like it does at the beginning where they hit the kid, but they hit the kid because they're arguing, not because they're, like, having fun.
Oh, interesting. That's immediately a stronger story. Yeah,
well, and then they're also, like, both, like, acrimonious towards the other, or, like, it's not like, oh, no, we hit him, and we're in it together. It's, the wife is like, you hit him. What have you done?
Yeah.
And he's like, no, look, his throat was cut. It wasn't me. So the kid pops out of the cornfield with his throat cut. They hit him with his car, and then they put him in the trunk to go find a police station. and driving, there's none of the rest of the stuff where they like stop with the old gas attendant or do all
that's
this.
interesting. I like that mechanic.
And there's no preamble. I did like that mechanic. There's no preamble in the town.
Okay.
It just starts on the couple. They're driving. They hit the kid. They put the kid in the trunk. And then as they're driving, they drive through the town. And they're just looking around at the town. And the town is frozen in the 60s. Everything stopped in the 50s or the 60s. I can't remember exactly when the story was written. I think it was probably in the late 70s, early 80s. But the town is stopped like 20 years ago. Okay. Everything, like the movie theater marquee still says like Elizabeth Taylor, Cleopatra. Sure. Everything's run down, but it's still like hamburgers are 35 cents. And they're like, "Whoa, this is weird." And then they pass the church, and the church has a brand new like quote up on it with today's date, and they're like, okay. So then they stop, and the guy goes in to investigate the church, and this is another point where the couple hating each other makes some real he gets a little bit of meat out of it, because he says he wants to go in and investigate, and she says, absolutely not, we need to leave. Sure. And she says, I'm going to wait 5 minutes, and if you're not out, I'm leaving. And he's like, you'll wait 2 and then claim that something happened. And then they fight over her purse, and he takes her keys.
Oh, that's so good.
And so leaves her in the car without keys to go in and investigate this church. And then it's as he's investigating the church that he just sort of, it's a writer's trick. Uh-huh. King lays out all of these weird, mysterious clues of, like, the book with people's birth and death dates in them, and, the smashed iconography and all of these other things. Yeah. And then he just massages it in the narration so that the guy just puts it together. Oh, okay. And it is as, like, cheap a trick as that sounds, but he does it well enough so that you don't think about it. Sure. Like, he just does it well. And the trick he does is he has the guy, like, imagining himself telling this story to his wife and her not believing it. Uh-huh. Which, it, like, sets up a couple of layers away from the ridiculousness of the plot device that he's using. Sure. But the thing that he puts together, and the thing that they don't do in the movie, is that this has been going on in this town for a long time.
Oh, that's interesting.
So in the movie, I guess because either they didn't want to hire that many kids, or they couldn't deal with the ramifications of this going on for a long time. Sure. AKA children having sex and having children to replace themselves. Yeah. That's probably what they wanted to cut out of the film. Yeah, that makes sense. They have it all have just happened. Yeah. Which does make it it makes it a much less of a big story, I guess, or like it just takes away some impact of it. Like they found this town that's been doing this, like the original preacher that came to town that started all of this has long since been killed for turning 19. Sure. And Isaac is the new preacher who is selected afterwards, who's 9 years old, and he's the one who hears the voice now. I see. And so it's like this ongoing thing where he's looking through the books and seeing all of these people that have been killed since they're 19. And then there's also a thing,
in the movie, you're like, oh, this just happened. And you're like, oh, this cult is going to last 7 years max. And then this kid is going to realize that he set up a situation where he's going to get killed in 7 years, and he's going to call it off. You know what I mean? Yeah. It makes it much stronger for it to have been an ongoing society that operates that way. Yeah, that's a real story.
We should make sure we should make clear in the movie, part of the takeover of the town by this small preacher is that everybody over 18 has to die, which includes the children who are already 18. As they turn 19, they are sacrificed to he who walks among the rows, this demon that lives in the cornfield.
But the movie also starts with the town full of adults. They are all murdered.
Like
within the movie. It's like within,
and also they make a point of saying like
time jump, but it's like a year or something, right? Like after that, these people show up.
If that. Who knows?
It feels like it could be the next day.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't feel like it's any different. And they make a point of saying, like, Isaac came from somewhere else.
Oh, right.
And convinced all the children. It's like, well, that doesn't... What?
Yeah. You're like, oh, yeah, kids always believe the new kid.
Kids always believe the new kid who wears a pilgrim hat and is a preacher.
Yeah, and is 32.
Yeah. So in the story, it feels more lived in. It feels more complete. And And it also ends with both of them dying. Like, it's not a good ending.
Which makes sense. I was surprised when this ended positively.
Oh, yeah. Like, they don't blow up the monster. The monster is not killable in The Children of the Corn.
Sure, because it should just be sort of an amorphous... It should be a spirit, like a...
Yeah, exactly.
Just a voice in the head of a kid.
Yeah, like the husband comes back out of the church and sees the kids surrounding the car, and then both he and his wife are sort of incompetent at fighting them off, and he runs away, and they take her. And then he, like, goes into the cornfield and thinks he's heading towards the highway, but very, very slowly the corn is reshaping to lead him back to the center of the cornfield, where he finds his wife dead and crucified, and then the thing eats him.
Yeah, okay.
But then the thing, the button at the end of the story, and I'm just telling the whole story because it's so much more interesting than the movie. The button at the end of the story is that he who walks among the rows through Isaac tells everybody that he's really pissed off that he had to kill him, that they couldn't handle it, so now the age is lowered to 18.
Oh, nice.
And all the kids who are 18 just walk into the cornfield to be sacrificed. And it ends on one of the girls who's 17, who's pregnant with Malachi's child.
Okay.
Watching him go and, like, secretly thinking about how much she hates the corn and dreams about one day walking in and burning it down, but she knows that the thing in the corn sees everything, even into human hearts, and so she just clams it up. And then it just says, like, the corn was happy. Like, it's a much better story that way.
That's really strong.
Yeah.
Comparatively.
Yeah. No, it's not even one of King's best stories. It's just a solid little story.
Yeah, it's a little sweet little nug.
And I think originally when this movie was going to be made, King wrote the script.
Oh, really?
And then he started it off with like 20 pages of the couple fighting in the car, and the director's like, I'm not making this movie. So...
a thing that this movie did that I did really appreciate was it made me look up Gasohol. Because they keep referring to it, and I was like, was this script written by an actual 12-year-old? But no, that's just what they called ethanol.
Yep.
Back in the day in the Corn Belt, I guess.
It's pretty good.
Maybe they still do. I don't know.
Yeah, that also felt like a weird, like the screenwriter or the director decided to try to make some sort of contemporary commentary on ethanol, or, you know, because it's 84, it's not that long after the power crisis of the 70s.
Oh, that's true.
Ethanol is on the rise, and it felt like some sort of ham-fisted attempt to get some sort of contemporary political thing in there, but it didn't go anywhere, and it didn't make any sense.
No, but they do talk about it a lot.
Yeah, so I don't know what was going on with there.
That's interesting. I was just too distracted by the word and me not knowing it to be
Gasohol?
To even process what was happening.
But yeah, things the movie does well. Creepy child preacher.
Yes, great. And Malachi, the kid who plays Malachi, is really upsetting to watch do things. Yeah,
Malachi, the main enforcer for the child preacher.
Yeah.
The line "Outlander, we have your woman" is pretty good. As you said, Linda Hamilton is in it.
It's a big bummer though, because her flimsy floppy husband is the one who's like running around hitting things with hammers, and Linda Hamilton just gets grabbed by children and tied to a thing.
Right, and when we all know that she could kill all of them. Yeah,
I think if you made this movie exactly the same and just swapped their roles, it would immediately be 15% stronger. Because the dude, he's just like a dude, you know what I mean? You're like, almost any person, if you're surrounded by a big mob of kids, you're gonna get knocked down by a big mob of kids. But like Linda Hamilton in 1984, legitimately, I feel like could beat up any amount of children.
Yeah, she's not that far away from killing a Terminator.
Yeah. She's like clearly ripped and like has the mental fortitude.
And I even like Peter Horton, the guy playing her husband, well enough, but he's no Linda Hamilton.
No.
I don't know. So other things they do well. Not really violence. The violence is pro forma and pretty boring.
Yeah.
Not really art direction, except for the occasional use of corn.
Yeah. And it was nice that I could like sort of tell the corn was moving itself around.
Yeah, that was kind of nice. I liked, though I don't think that the qualities I appreciated were intentional, or that most people would appreciate this, but I liked how completely janky CGI the monster was when it came to eat Isaac.
It is a really charming... It's rare that I look at early CGI and I'm like, I don't think it's just awful, but this monster is really nice in a, like, goofy lo-fi way.
Well, because they don't even really try to make it look like a monster. It's just some strange digital effects eating him.
Yeah.
Which I really appreciated. It kind
just
of looks
feels like that's what the monster is.
Yeah, it kind of looks like he's getting eaten by the predator's heat vision.
Yes. Yeah. I feel like usually... Well, yeah. I don't need to talk more.
Yeah. So the only other thing I wanted to talk about was my absolute favorite thing in the movie, which is after they blow up the monster, they're all running away, and the kid yells, "Is it dead?" And the guy says, "I think so," and the kid just stops running and goes, "Then why are we running?" And the guy has to grab him and go, "No, come on." Which, I laughed.
That is a genuinely inspired beat.
And way too hard. Then why are we running? It's so little kid. It's so genuine, like that's what a 7-year-old would do.
Probably the only good child writing in the movie.
Yes.
Writing kids is super hard, and I understand that. And I think most of the people who do it should maybe not try to do it. And I think most of this movie, and like this is a movie about a precocious kid leading some other kids, so it like makes sense that like the main kid doesn't talk like a kid, but the rest of them could talk more like kids.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But that beat is very 7-year-old.
Yeah. If we ever get Adventure Girls made, we then have to make a sequel that is the Adventure Girls version of Children of the Corn.
Oh please, corny girls.
Celery has become Isaac, essentially, from her head injury.
Yeah.
She can see he who walks among the rose.
Can it be he who walks among the roses, and it's like all rose bushes instead of corn?
Yes,
it's much more threatening.
Then everybody going through it gets hurt.
Yeah.
And
even if the rose bush isn't trying to hurt you, you just
fits with our franchise.
It's just difficult. Yeah.
Just constant pain. The other thing that I at least thought was funny, though also very bad, was that the movie just ends.
Yeah.
On the most lackluster moment.
Yeah.
It just, like, they do the obligatory, the monster's not dead scare, but it's just a girl hid in the car, and then he deals with it with no problem, and then they just start walking away and the credits start rolling.
Yes. It's not even... It was
very funny.
It's like there are a couple of moments where you could end it before that, and you'd be like, yes, that was the end of the movie. But it feels like it like runs out. It feels like they were like, we meant to put one more thing in, but it fell, we lost it somewhere on the floor. It's just, they're like, yes, this is where we ran out of frames, so the movie, so credits. It feels super, it's just, okay.
Bad movie.
Yeah. Not the worst movie. On the Cujo scale.
Not the worst movie. Yeah. It had more... It was more fun than Cujo. I mean, here's the thing. Bad movie, but could I see myself putting this on again sometime while I'm washing dishes? Yes.
Oh, yeah. 100%. There's definitely enough to enjoy while you're washing dishes. Yeah. Or, like, if you had to cut 35 potatoes. Yeah.
Am I really genuinely curious and probably going to watch the sequels? Yes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So, in that sense, somewhat of a success.
Somewhat of a success. Good bits.
Certainly not... I don't know. I feel like this one falls... mostly on my side.
It's on your side. I'll go ahead and say it's on your side.
Even though, seeing a 9-year-old with a weird voice be crucified in a cornfield almost tips it over. But
right,
we're gonna say this is not Prime King.
You could cut this down into a 12-minute movie that would be like pretty decent, the full runtime.
So one of the things I was thinking of when I was originally putting together our list of stuff to watch was whether or not to try to track down short films, because this was made as a 12-minute, I think, short film called Disciples of the Crow before it got made as a feature film.
Oh, interesting. My fear with Stephen King short films is that he has that like $1 deal for students, so there have to be 800 Stephen King short films that are
probably
not that I'm going to say student films are 100% bad, but I'm sure 100% of them are bad.
So probably, but this is one of the only ones that I found listed on things. So it may have something
and if it's
to recommend
before this, then I don't think he had made that deal yet. I think that it must have been like a...
I have no idea. It might have been a student film, but it might have been... I feel like student films in the 80s are different than student films in the 90s and 2000s.
Yeah.
Because student films in the 80s are people who are insane enough to think that they can make a movie as a student.
Yeah.
And people in the 90s and 2000s are people who think that they're going to be the next Quentin Tarantino.
Yeah, exactly.
Or Blair Witch Project.
Yeah. And some of them are.
Some of them are. All right. This has been another bone-chilling installment of Hell to the King. That's all I got. We'll be back tomorrow to round out this first week in October with Drew Barrymore in Firestarter. You said this one's good, right? You remember this one from when you were a kid?
I am pretty... Yeah. I vaguely remember watching it, and I remember it being good.
Okay. I am hoping. I'm always hoping for goodness, even though
Of course.
Bad movies mean I win.
Sure. But
bad movies still mean I lose.
Bad movie also means you're bored for 2.5 hours. Which is worse. I would rather lose and be happy than win and be bored.
Yeah. All right. So we'll be back tomorrow to start a fire.
See you tomorrow, jerks.
Yeah. Sleep like the dead. Boop.
Hell to the King is a special presentation of the Cinesthesia podcast, produced by Iguanodonald Studios, and distributed by Split Tooth Media. Music by Loyalty Freak, and by Grumbly Jim. Hell to the King is recorded live before our parents come home and find out what we've been doing.
Is this what you're looking for? This is what I'm here to give you.
What is it with this cord?
You got me.
Cinesthesia.